Hey everybody, welcome back. It is season 2, episode 17, and we're broadcasting from North Carolina. We're not broadcasting from New Jersey anymore. So that's exciting and new. It's been a long week for me, and I'm obviously uploading this a little late for those of you who pay attention to that, so I apologize. I haven't completely unpacked yet. There's my suitcase. But we record this in basically real time, so as you are well aware, we just kind of bring it to you authentically. So we're talking about a sort of a new topic that transitions where we've been to where we're going to go in the end of the season. We're going to talk about birds today. And I'm excited for this one because it's sort of an overview. It's a lead in to where we're going to be when we're talking about more specific types of birds. And it's also a glance back to where we've been, which is to say with ladders and with apples, right? Because we've been talking about connection and transcending and knowledge. And when we talk about birds, kind of brings it all together in that, not saying birds are super knowledgeable, but I am saying when we think about birds as an overview, as an overarching construct, we're looking at connecting between the sort of earth and the sky, right? The flesh and the spirit almost. We get that connection, right? So we get that tie back to ladders. We get that idea of transcending, of coming up higher, which again has to do with ladders. It also has to do with knowledge, right? That's how we come up, is to learn more. But there is something really cool about birds as an overview, and that is that they're symbolic of freedom, being present, and keeping things simple. And I really love that. And so I had a couple other things I wanted to talk about this week, and I've been going on my runs and I've been really paying attention to birds in a way I never have before. And I was like, oh, this is what I need to do this week. Sometimes I get those like intuitive nudges, right? From the universe and from God. So we're talking about birds this week, which is perfect because actually it lines up even better with what I was planning for next week, which is topics about specific birds, like owls and doves and things. Because of course, for the most part, I like to look at things that are nature-made and not man-made, right? And so, because nature-made is always full of truth. And man-made items are not. You know, I was talking to someone about this and I was like, the reason I don't love things like tarot, you know, I don't practice tarot, but I definitely can get messages from people who do tarot. But why I prefer things like runes and like crystals and things that are a bit more nature made, you know, is because like there's a fundamental truth in nature that we cannot even try to emulate. We just can't do it. So birds come into that in a big way. So when we're thinking about birds and we're thinking about, first off, a lot of times we don't think, like all these topics I bring up, they are mostly taken for granted by us. A great many times. Often the case, actually. And we take them for granted because we expect them to be there. Kind of. You know, that's what happens when you take things for granted. It's like, oh, it's there. And then now I only realize it's gone when it's taken from me. And to be perfectly honest, in moving, I've realized that's very true. I guess birds can also kind of be symbolic of transition, you know, because they're always flitting from place to place too, which I like as a concept. But we lose things in transition a lot and we don't realize what we have until it's gone. And for me, that was true as well. Like, I don't know where anything is. I don't have a nail salon. I don't have a groomer for my pet. I don't know how to pump my own gas. Like, I just did that for the first time. I have to use my map for literally everything. My runs in the morning, going to food shop. Like, there's so much I don't know. That's okay though, because there are some things that are the same too. Right? There are things that are just universal in this kind of workout. But we do take things for granted, you know, and I certainly did. Knowing, I took the things I knew for granted until I got moved somewhere else and I was like, oh crap, I don't know anything. That was really funny. But so when we're talking about birds and we're thinking about being present and things being simple, right? If you've ever heard the term bird brain, people talk about that when they're like, oh, you're so simple. You're so like have a tiny brain kind of a thing. Birds are very, very simple. They fly, they make nests, they hop around, they eat. Most animals are a little bit more simplistic, but some are more complex than others, right? Like my cat throughout this movie has been super complex emotionally, whereas birds are not, they really are just, again, as an overview, there are types of birds that we'll talk about, but as an overview, they're just very simple, and they just, sing and chirp and fly. And then we only notice them, one, if they're singing, right? When winter becomes spring and we hear the birds chirping, we're like, oh, springtime, right? Two, when they poop on our cars or on our house or somewhere that's very annoying, right? And that's not their fault, because birds don't have sphincters. They don't have muscles in their butts, so they just accidentally poop. So there's a fact for you if you didn't know. They can't help themselves. So we get mad about it, but it's not their fault. It's not intentional. It just releases while they're flying. And then three, we notice birds when they get in our way, right? When they like fly into our car or like our window, or we get nervous that they're gonna like swoop into us. And so we really only notice them when it's convenient to us. But they're always there. They're always somewhere, right? I mean, some birds fly south for the winter, right? But which is actually super relevant to my life, right? Because I just flew south for the next sequel of my life. But so that just works out too. But when we're thinking about birds, it's about taking time to notice the simple things, taking time to notice the little things. In doing that, it allows us to be very present. It allows us to be very free. Because when we are present and when we're focusing on the small things, and when we just really take time to notice and be aware, we don't really have a choice but to stop thinking about all the things that haven't happened yet, or things that make us anxious, or things that we need to fix, or, all these things that we do. So there's a simple, but like a very present awareness that comes with like bird watching, which, by the way, I never liked birds. I never saw their relevance. This is a recent, even for me, like my mom always fed the birds. I was like, Mom, what are you doing? You're messing up the ecosystem. Stop feeding the birds. Like, they have to find their own stuff. And she's just like, quiet girl, and got some more bird seed, right? But now I realize the profound nature in doing and being aware of the birds. And I sit corrected. She was right, I was wrong. She often is, right? So there is a real beauty in the simplicity of just like sitting and watching the birds. There's a real joy that can come from that. And so when we see birds, when we think of birds, what it should be a sort of symbol to us to do is to slow down, is to be present, is to not worry, right? I think it's Matthew that says, like, the birds don't worry about what they're going to eat. Why are you worrying? Aren't you more important than a bird? Right? And so it's that idea that they're provided for, so are we. All they do is show up. They get what they need. We can do the same, right? And it's really just a simple, beautiful, profound message that has to do with how we attain freedom. Anybody who tells you they're free, often they're not. Because freedom's a mentality. Freedom is not a physicality, right? So you can be in a jail cell and be freer than someone who's out in the Commonwealth believing that they have all these things that they need to do, and they're under crippling debt and crippling anxiety, and they have all this pressure on them. You're not free. Like, you're not free if that's the case, guys. And I know that that's harsh, and I know that that's hard, and I as someone who, I will tell you this honestly, my own true life here. As somebody who has a felony conviction, I am freer now in my mentality than I've ever been. And the threat of me going to jail is bigger now than it ever was. I actually already been to jail, right? But the peace that comes with mindset freedom I'm 1,000 times more free now than I was when I was a good, upstanding citizen who taught every day, couldn't pay all her bills, was in credit card debt, like was in all of these terrible things. So the freedom that comes with a peaceful, present mindset is literally everything. And I'm telling you this, having done both. Having done, actually, as far, I having done all of it, actually, at this point, right? Like, I tell you this as someone who was formerly an overthinker, an overanalyzer, an overworrier. I had to know everything. I had to do everything. I had to plan everything. It was very energetically exhausting. I was good at what I did, but it was energetically exhausting. I was trying to control everything all the time. To now, someone who's like, okay, I'm going to show up where I can show up. I'm going to do what I can do. But I'm also going to be very receptive to the fact that, like, my plans could change. And I'm going to be open to the fact that, like, I need help from God and from the universe. And, like, I'm helping myself and it'll help me back. They'll help me back. He'll help me back. Right? And so it's this balance, this go with the flow. So now I have this very real freedom that I hope everybody has, this peace that passes understanding, because it's like I can sit back in the comfort and say, okay, no, this is fine. It is well with my soul. And this is like, and so there's also this like very strange element of like, I am actually a prisoner now, but I don't feel like it because mentally I'm not shackled, you know? And so when I was free, what ended up happening is that I was actually not free at all. And in going to jail and my mugshot going viral and all these terrible things that happened and all these people thinking all these terrible things about me, I got a piece of like resting in the knowledge of who I am and what I know about myself to be true. I wouldn't trade it for anything, you know? And sometimes when I'm working with my clients, they're like, well, how did you get to be like this? And I'm like, honestly, get a jail stint. It's not funny. It's not funny. It was miserable. I would never suggest it to anybody for real. But it did help break down my own beliefs of I had to be perfect. I had to be on my A game. I had to be all these things to be counted worthy. Because obviously I wasn't those things anymore, right? It was the best thing that could have happened to me because it made me realize the importance of showing up as you are and knowing you're enough. That is why I love the symbol of the birds, because it's like they aren't trying to be anything other than what they are. And there's freedom in that. There's freedom in showing up and knowing this is who I am, this is what I do. And it comes with being very present, being very aware. That's why I say it ties back to knowledge of last week. Self-knowledge, self-revelation, self-understanding, and showing up in that space is literally life-changing. I mean, it's really life-changing. So when we look at the birds, we can use that as a marker, as an indication. Hey, am I being present today? Am I listening to the birds, or am I just driving over the speed limit to get to my next destination? Am I speeding through life, or am I noticing? And again, as somebody who used to speed through life, I know the difference now. You know, I know the freedom that comes in being very present and very aware. Even when like working out, you know, because what you resist persists. So when you're trying to push yourself so hard and you're trying to pretend like I'm not tired, I got this, it's just going to persist in your tiredness. The minute you like take a breathe back and you're like, okay, I'm exhausted, and you take that rest, is the minute you can move forward again. There's freedom in being present. And there's freedom in being not simple, but simplistic. Right? Not simple, but simplistic. And just enjoying the simple things. The world will tell you, speed up, get more, do more, work harder, take out more debt, get this shot, get this house, do this thing. It's all about acquisition and attachment in the world. But that's not really where freedom comes from. Freedom comes in release. Freedom comes in simplicity. Freedom comes in letting go. Freedom comes in all of these things that I want to say is the opposite of what society tells us to do, but like kind of. Right? Like freedom comes in doing as the birds do, not as the people do. I know that's like kind of a sort of a heavy, sort of a light message, I guess. It's like, damn, you know? But that's the real truth of it. You want to be free? Oh, have you seen The Notebook? If you've seen The Notebook, there's that discussion between Noah and Allie where it's talking about freedom. And he's like, I don't know, I just kind of thought you were free. And she's like, I am free. And he was like, no, you're not. You're doing this, what your dad wants you to do, what your mom wants you to do, what you're supposed to do. You're doing all these things. Like, you're not free. What do you do for you? And then she's like, well, I paint, right? There's also that other part where she's when they're in the ocean and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like gearing up to run. And she's like, I'm a bird. And he's like, if you're a bird, I'm a bird, right? Freedom. If you've seen that movie, being free to choose to love who you love, being free to choose your own destiny, being free to be yourself. Like those are all things that are themes in that movie. And it's not a surprise that it starts and ends with birds flying over the sound of the river. It's not a surprise that she feeds the swans. And if you have not seen it, I'm not really spoiling much for you, but it is very much about freedom. And birds are a common trope and theme and symbol throughout. So when we're thinking about birds, we're thinking about being free, almost always. But how do we attain that freedom? Birds tell us that too. Being present, transcending our former self, being connected, but not attached, right? They're connected to nature, but they're not attached to it. And being simple, like that's the joy. That's the freedom. Right? So I hope that's a helpful insight. I'm sorry I'm uploading this late. I'm going to be putting up all this content today, and then we're going to be back on normal schedule next week. I'm still like apartment hunting, doing all these things, but we'll be back on normal schedule and things will be just rocking along. Very excited to bring this message to you guys. I hope it resonates. I hope it's helpful, and I will be seeing you soon. Bye.